giving you an opportunity to get the full story from the people who tell it best. This is Mediacom News Leaders.
I'm Elizabeth Kling with Mediacom News Leaders. October is a busy and exciting month at Living History Farms in Urbandale, and Janet Dennis, the Director of Interpretation there, is here to tell us more about what we can expect. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So we have several exhibits that people can look forward to taking part in and other events this month. Let's start with the Pope exhibit happening right now as we are recording this.
Absolutely.
In the next couple of days.
On Wednesday morning. It's the 40th anniversary of St. Pope John Paul II's visit to Living History Farms. He was there October 4th, 1979. So we're taking a week to kind of reflect on how it was that he ended up in central Iowa and the impact that it had on Des Moines and on Living History Farms.
Yeah, for people who maybe aren't familiar with that moment in Iowa history, give us a little look back at how that unfolded and how many people were there for it.
Well, it was a personal letter from a farmer here in central Iowa through his bishop and then eventually to the Vatican, asking him to come to Iowa on his first U.S. tour. And he was going to be in Chicago, and the letter was, we know you're interested in rural communities and rural issues, and we're working hard on them here, come see us. And they were looking for really ways, I believe, for the Pope to contact individuals in the church who was really interested in taking that out to people. So it just, all of the stars aligned, and it ended up being one of the biggest crowds in one place in Iowa history. It was 350,000 people.
Huge.
It was a huge crowd.
Yeah. Wow. And so this exhibit will take people back to that day and
Absolutely.
that time and all of
and all of the logistics, the miles of snow fence and
what it took to make that
closing
happen.
down Hickman Road and the interstates to allow traffic to work out, all of the buses that ended up coming in and how people were able to make it in and out of the farms. The amount of media coverage was amazing. The local stations actually pooled their photography coverage. Reports talked about how they had a peaceable sharing of information for that particular day because it was so costly. Right. They were renting cameras from stations in Kansas City to be able to cover all of the excitement.
Yeah, given the technology at that time, I know too.
Absolutely.
That was no small feat to cover something of that magnitude. So yes, so many interesting aspects to that visit for people to check out in this opportunity this week. So we also want to talk about the Heritage Expo.
That's coming up on October 5th. That's on Saturday. And it's a chance for us to really highlight a lot of crafts and pastimes that are sort of being lost these days. Our 1850 farm, for instance, is going to talk about food preservation and running their smokehouse. We're doing spinning and weaving and those kinds of things in town with some presenters who are coming in, quilting, handwork, all of those kinds of things. Hopefully, if the weather cooperates, we'll even have horse-drawn plowing at the 1900 farm.
Yes, interesting to see for sure. So then this next one is something that people may not think about reflecting on necessarily, but you are going to be hosting a Victorian funeral, recreating a Victorian era funeral.
Yes, on October 12th, one of our Victorian houses in our 1875 town is hosting a funeral. And it's sometimes hard for me to explain to people, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that on Saturday, I'm at a funeral. But it's a way to compare all of the traditions that were important to the 19th century to cope with death compared to what we do now. Again, if the weather cooperates, we'll have our horse-drawn hearse out taking an empty coffin down to our cemetery. But we also have one of our interpreters dressed in widow's weeds, the matte black that was expected for a woman if her husband died. Our volunteers that are our choral group are going to present some hymns of that time period. And the ceremony is actually taken from press that was actually printed at that time. So it's a period experience.
Yeah, and just to compare, like you said, all of the important aspects to that process at that time compared to what we do today.
They covered their mirrors while the body was still in the house. They stopped clocks. It was a very specific tradition set really to help the family deal with it and process it because death was so present for them.
Sure, yeah. Well, and then we want to talk about how you'll be wrapping up the month at Living History Farms. You have an opportunity for people to come out and celebrate Halloween, and the kids
a little bit more
to
cheery
have a little
event.
bit, yeah, a little bit of fun too.
And we have 8 nights of Halloween, Thursday through Sundays. Each night has a different theme, and there's horse and wagon rides. Certain nights there may be Disney princesses.
Oh, yeah.
We have certain nights that the college mascots are actually in for the evening. So it's really a lot of fun just to see all the kids, and the parents always have a good time as well.
Yeah, and do people need to get tickets for that well in advance, or
They
what do
can,
you recommend?
or they can do it at the door, either one.
Okay.
But all the information is out on the website.
All right. So, well, Janet, thanks so much for your time.
Oh, thank you
We
for having
appreciate
us.
it. We've been talking with Janet Dennis, the Director of Interpretations at Living History Farms. Thanks so much for joining us on Mediacom News Leaders.